All right, here we go. And it is time for episode 17 of Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. Russ Cohen at Sportsology on Twitter going to join us coming up in just a couple minutes. And all presented by Parx Sportsbook. Download the app on your phone, your iPhone, or your Android, and get a $500 risk-free bet. No promo required. Just deposit, and you can get that risk-free bet, your first bet, up to $500. You can use it on same-game parlays. You can use it on player performances. You can use it on a spread, a prop, parlay, money line, you name it. It's all there. Player performances and live in-game betting are where it's at. So make sure you download the app. Real simple and very easy to navigate, and anybody can do it. Even maybe Russ can do it. And make sure you do it and deposit and get that $500 risk-free bet. Make sure you follow Parx on all the social channels at Parx Sportsbook on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. You get great content there. All the stuff from Natalie and Sam and Matt and Rich Gannon, Eddie Alvarez, Mike Quick. It's all there. And a lot of great content and daily specials and much more. So, again, follow on at Parx Sportsbook on Twitter, on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and check out all the different channels and all the different content that we're providing. We'll have a brand new episode of Odd G's coming up tomorrow with myself and Harry Mays at 1:30, and another episode of Stick to Hockey Live coming up on Thursday at 1 o'clock as always. And a lot to get into in this episode. We're kind of knocking on the door of the All-Star break. But let's bring him in right now. You read his stuff at sportsology.com. He's at Sportsology on Twitter. But in reality, he is at Russ Cohen. And he joins Stick to Hockey Live. Russ, what's going on? You got a headset now.
I've been using it for a little while. I mean, sometimes I get lazy and I don't, but I want to give good quality to your listeners.
Good quality audio. Your audio does sound better with the headset.
Now, do you want to know the secret?
Oh, you got a secret? Okay, yeah.
So this is like a call center headset. This isn't one of those fancy ones that everybody's got that they feel like they have to go spend like $200 on. I had a really good one and it broke, right? And I kept putting black tape on it. And then I was like, all right, fine. That one I spent like $90 on. But as technology gets better, things get cheaper. This is $25 on Amazon.
You didn't get that from the McDonald's drive-thru?
No.
You look at your. Can I take your order?
I know.
At the drive-thru. That works though. Russ, a lot to talk about. We're knocking on the door of the All-Star break. You know, I was looking at this week. My wife said to me the other day, she goes, "What do you got this week?" And I said, "All right, let me look." And I looked and I go, "Okay, I got Saturday, Flyers Kings at 1 o'clock. Then I got Tuesday and Wednesday." And then I realized upon closer inspection that Wednesday was actually 8 days later, not this Wednesday. It's
Right.
the All-Star break. I'm kind of like not on my normal calendar because the NHL calendar still isn't very normal.
No, it's true. And I just went through the same thing with my wife. We just a couple hours ago went through the schedule. I was originally going to go to the All-Star game, and then I saw that there were 3 other mega events in Las Vegas at that same time. And since we're still in COVID, I said, no can do.
Hold off. Yeah.
Hold off.
Yeah. I mean, crazy that it's in Vegas. And
I mean, because there's a UFC event and there's also the Pro Bowl. That's a lot of people, man.
Oh my goodness. And then and there's probably like conventions going on and all kinds of stuff.
I got scared away, I'll be honest.
Yeah, the dishwasher repairman convention's probably happening or something like that.
Yep.
Did you get up to New York for Henrik Lundqvist's retirement night?
I did. And that was great. It was one of those things where, there are those players that I imagine not a lot of people hate Claude Giroux, except for maybe some Flyers fans. I
Maybe some
imagine not a
Penguin
lot
fans.
of not a lot of people hate Derek Jeter, even Met fans. And Lundqvist is kind of like one of those guys, and they did a great job. And he's just so humble. It's just ridiculous. But he always was that way. And so the chants of Henrik were great to hear because, haven't heard him in a few years. It's going to be the last time, I'm sure. And so that was fun to be there for that because I had been there for that a few other times in my life. But I always tell a story like, and you'll appreciate this because you're a goalie. You know how like when we used to get in the locker room, we'll play Remember When, and let's say it wasn't Lundqvist's day. And let's say it was, I don't know, Marty Baron or Steve Vallequette or whatever. It's probably Vallequette because if he was at the Wells Fargo, he was beating the Flyers anyhow, right? Like we all know,
Yeah.
he had a great record against the Flyers. And Lundqvist would still be there in the locker room, like next to him, fiddling with his stick, fiddling with his stuff, acting like he was invisible. Nobody would talk to him. He wouldn't, but he wasn't like a like he wasn't like, getting in the way. He wanted the other goalie to get his due, but he was still just sort of in there. And a lot of goalies don't do that. Most of the time, that number one goalie's never there. If it's the backup that let's say started the game, you never see that guy. He's usually gone by the time we get in there. That wasn't the case always with Lundqvist.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like you look at him. I mean, he is like movie star looks.
And his
I
brother,
mean,
it's the same thing. This is
yeah,
what I tweeted. His parents are cute, and then there's his brother Joel, another model. Like
yeah.
that's that's what I tweeted.
Like he must have like either like hammer toes or bad breath. There's got to be something
There has
wrong
to
with
be
him,
something.
right? I mean, he's like a handsome guy. He was a great NHL goaltender. And one of the parts, and I know Valley tweeted this out, Steve Vallequette and Kevin Weeks did as well. They both played with him, and they said next stop Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that
And
was an interesting one. I know.
yeah, I mean, look, his numbers are awesome. He didn't win a cup, and he played a long time, and he had opportunities. Got to the final, obviously, back in AV's first year there in New York. But is he a shoe-in Hall of Famer? Because we know that the NHL does not induct a whole heck of a lot of goalies.
No,
Frankly,
and
it's embarrassing when it's the most important position in the sport.
it is embarrassing, and I had to point that out in the tweet that is not a slam dunk. It would be for me if I was voting
Yeah,
because of what you said and also his game 7 magic. I mean, he's one of the best game 7 goalies of his generation, if not the best. And so, you know, there's a problem with the Hall of Fame. They don't induct enough goalies. And so people are like, well, who's not inducted as an example? And of course, I brought up the easy one because I keep hearing from people even now that, well, Mike Richter should be in, not Lundqvist because he won a cup. And
yeah,
it's like, yeah, except winning the cup isn't everything. You have to look at an entire body of work. And by the way, I would put Richter in too.
yeah.
But
Me
if I
too.
had to, but if I had to choose between the two, I've told people Lundqvist is better, and they don't believe me. Not all of them, but some of them, just because of the cup factor. And it's like, listen, I watched them both their entire careers. I've interviewed them both. I've seen them operate on and off the ice. I'm just telling you, Lundqvist is better.
And he's got you can look at Richter and go, well, he's got international success. So does
So is
Lundqvist.
Lundqvist.
Yeah, I mean, for Team Sweden and
Yeah.
Richter in the what was it, the '96 World Cup of
World Cup.
hockey? I mean,
Yeah.
he was unbelievable.
He was. The Wells
I mean,
Fargo, one of their actually, I
yeah,
think it was their first regular game,
yeah,
and they barely got the seats in time. Like that was one
yeah,
of those crazy. But everybody knows that because yes, that was a time where U.S. hockey was changing and could actually compete and beat Canada
yeah.
with all their best players.
I remember going to watch an exhibition game before Richter's even in the NHL. This may be 89 or 90, I want to say. But I went to an exhibition game where Team USA, they had an Olympic trial team, and they were doing a tour and playing NHL teams. And they played the Flyers, and Mike Richter was the goalie at Wisconsin at the time, and
Yeah.
was the Team USA goalie. And we didn't even know at that point. We're like, all right, he was already a draft pick and all that, but you go, okay, is he going to be a legit NHL goalie? Little we know, just about 4 years later, he'd be winning the cup and ending the drought in New York in '94.
Yeah, I mean, and he was a local kid, obviously, that's been told a
Yep,
thousand
Germantown
million.
Academy.
Yeah. And so, so some people knew about him. I certainly knew about him. Did I know to that degree? No. And actually, when I spoke to Richter once about his time in Wisconsin, and that really took him back for a minute because at that point he hadn't probably talked about Wisconsin in like 30 years.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he had to find his way. So it wasn't like gangbusters, Ken Dryden at Cornell. Took a little bit.
The funny thing is, too, I know the guy that was his tandem partner playing youth hockey in the area.
Oh, wow.
A guy named Jumbo Ralston, Jimmy Ralston.
Jumbo.
And Jumbo's a big boy.
Yeah.
But Jumbo, I mean, he was an incredible goalie. And Richter was actually his backup for most of the time in youth growing up. Yeah, they were two good players. And then obviously Richter.
I'm sure Richter was faster than Jumbo, and that's probably what did Jumbo in.
Yeah. Jumbo could move, though, for a big boy. And I still see Jumbo at the rink very often now.
That's nice.
These days. Yeah. So let's talk about the Flyers-Kings game, because I talked to Bill about this on Flyers Daily, Bill Meltzer, and I'm convinced that winning the game the way they did was better than winning the game 4-1 or 5-2, because they had to stare down the face of adversity multiple times in the game, including when LA gets the game tied at 19-22 with the goalie pulled
Yeah.
after Kopitar pounds that one home. And the fact that they had to win it with that kind of adversity, I think slays two dragons for them. Not that they're all of a sudden going to go on some win streak and put themselves back in any conversation for the postseason. That ship has sailed.
Right.
But to me, winning the game the way they did, I think, was important in a lot of ways.
It was important, and you're right. They did have that point where they had to overcome adversity and then also overcome a challenge. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know. I talked about this the other day, but even for someone like you, and you have post game, so you stay a little longer. But at the point where it looked like the Flyers won, people are texting home, fans, people like me, hey, be home in an hour. You want dinner? You pick it up. And then all of a sudden the world stopped when they're like, hold on, we have to review it. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the crowd was holding their breath, man. I felt bad for a couple seconds. It was quick, but for a couple seconds, people's hearts stopped.
Yeah, because Provorov comes out from behind the goaltender, never touches him
Right.
through the crease, but that could have had. I mean, if he just bumps him a little bit
Yes.
or impedes his ability to make the save, that is getting overturned.
Right. And that would have, but you're right. It was a really good thing. There's still some bad things going on, and Cam Atkinson was right to point them out in the post game and again, I keep saying this, he's probably won 4 or 5 games on his own, and besides Giroux, where would this team even be without Cam Atkinson? They'd be like lower than the Sabres at this point.
I totally agree. There's another thing I talked about, Bill. I said one of the great tragedies of this season is that because of the way this has gone, Giroux is going to get moved at the deadline.
Yeah.
I'd say that's 95%.
No, I think that's
sure,
happening. Yeah.
right. And I go, you're only going to see 3/4 of a season of Cam Atkinson and Claude Giroux. You'd like to see those two play on a good team together because they complement each other beautifully.
They do.
The shooter and scorer with the consummate playmaker. And, I think sometimes people mistake Atkinson as a guy that, well, he's not that good because he goes through cold spells. Well, every scorer does.
Yes.
But he busts his ass
All
game
the
in,
time,
game out.
every shift.
Yep. And it tells me a lot about the guy, Russ, that he's such a good penalty killer and a relentless penalty killer. And for a skilled scorer to have that element in his game and in his toolbox tells me a lot about the character of the guy.
Yeah, no question. He's a high character guy, but he also had to. I said that was a great play by Giroux and a great goal by him, but it was an entire great shift by Atkinson because he had to go and steal the puck first before any of that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And I think those are things that I think that sort of get overlooked with Atkinson. But again, yeah, like this team without him would be in trouble, like to the point where they would, I mean, maybe some fans would like that, where they would be a top 5 pick team, and that's fine. But they brought him in for the right reasons. Like he's done his end of the bargain. There's just so many others that aren't.
Yeah. And, I just, when he speaks to he's such a likable player.
He really
And
is.
not because he likes the area and was excited to come here, but because the way he kind of calls it like he sees it. Like, hey, no coach is going to get us out of this shit. We got to get ourselves out of this. This is on the
Right.
players. And
Right.
it's not like player speak and cliches. To me, it's honest, and it's I guess the way to put it is it's genuine.
It is genuine. And again, that game had a lot of hiccups. So after the first 20 seconds, the Flyers didn't do anything the whole rest of the first period, and there were bad ebbs and flows in there. And so he was right. He was like, yeah, this isn't cured. It was good to get the win, and you would know they needed the win. I mean, that's obvious. You didn't want to go winless for a month, but there's just still some weird things going on with that team, with the lineup. Even Ratcliffe, I think they brought up for the wrong reasons, and I liked what he did. But
Mhm.
if you're bringing him up just because he's a big body, like Chuck said, it's the wrong reason to bring him up. Because Isaac Ratcliffe's supposed to be a scorer too. And so I'm not bringing up Isaac Ratcliffe to just be like bookends with Zach McEwen so they could check guys around because you're worried about losing to like the Islanders and saying that you weren't big enough in that game. Like that wasn't the reason. It just
Is he
wasn't.
going to be a goal scorer at the NHL level though? I
He's
mean, he scored
supposed to be,
50
yeah.
in the OHL.
Yeah,
He doesn't
he's
have
supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, big men take a little longer.
They
Big
do. The
body
power
guys.
forwards definitely do. And
Yeah.
sometimes they they don't turn out the way you want, like Nick Ritchie. Is kind of like,
Hmm.
okay, Nick Ritchie's like, not didn't do anything for the Leafs so far, but had gotten some goals with Boston, like 14, 15, same with Anaheim, but he was expected to do more. He didn't. Julian Gauthier, same thing with like the Rangers, has all these abilities, never put them all together. And so Ratcliffe, yeah, it was nice for him to get the call up because he wasn't having the greatest year in Lehigh, but nobody is. So, and I feel like he produced well. But again, I want to see him get at least 5 games. They didn't get Linus Sandin 5 games. It's like, and they're getting stuck on, like, I get it. Jerry Mayhew gives all out effort. That's great. And he's got 3 goals.
But he's
Terrific.
not a part of the future.
Are you really going to re-sign him though? Like, this is,
Yeah. He's
so that's where you
29.
have to look at things and say, these are your guys in your system, your building blocks. You need to bring them along right now.
Yeah.
And you can't do it on these quick look-sees either. And same with Sandin. Even though he's 25, he's still new to the NHL. Like, one game wasn't right. Like, what could you tell in one game with like 7 minutes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only reason I could advocate for Mayhew being in the lineup because he's working well with Morgan Frost.
That's fine.
So that's one element.
Yes.
You don't have him in there because he's part of your future, Mayhew, but he's working well with Frost right now, and if that helps Frost gain confidence, and you've been looking at Frost, and we see
Mhm.
elements and flashes, but we haven't seen consistency. But his game seems to be coming along a little bit now, as the detail plays in the defensive and neutral zone seem to be getting better. Now
Way
I
better.
think we're starting to see his creativity from an offensive standpoint start to rear its head, which is good.
Well, yeah, that always takes longer when you're now asking a guy to be defensively responsible. He's making some hits now, right? Where that wasn't part of his game before, but now he's stronger. So he's doing that. So the offense is always going to be last again then because he has to think for a while to do those other things, right? You don't
So they
want
become
really
habits, right?
yeah, they have to become habits. You don't want hockey players thinking on the ice. It's just it needs to become habit, and then the confidence does come in where the offense comes in. Now, look, if you put Frost with Giroux, I guarantee you would have points.
Yep.
That was the case before, but they haven't wanted to do that, so that's okay. It's going to take a little longer, but already fans are dumping on him. It's like I get that it's a bad year, but again, there was a limit to how really good Frost was going to be anyhow, in the sense that he was not going to be a superstar. So don't act like he's a superstar that's not coming around. Like,
That's not
don't
living up to it.
that's not living up to it. I mean, you look at Lafreniere with the Rangers. There's things that happen that coaches do and organizations do that sometimes hold these kids back too. And I'm not saying the Flyers have done that with Frost, but I'm saying what they've done is they're trying to instill that 200-foot game, and that is definitely holding them back offensively, I think.
Yeah, and there also is some circumstance there. Obviously, I mean, he barely played for 2 years
Yes.
because of the injury. He comes in after Couturier gets hurt last year, and in his second game, like a second shift into the second game, he's got the shoulder issue. Then he's got to have surgery and
Yeah.
everything that goes with it in prime developmental years. Russ, when you look at this team and going forward, and they got to get more guys in the lineup. Perhaps we see Zamula at some point for an extended period. I know he's not having the greatest year with the Phantoms, and as you allude to,
He's got
not many
14
guys are.
points. I mean, he's doing
Yeah,
fine. I mean, okay, let me ask you this. Putting Zamula in there or keeping Keith Yandel in there, who's doing next to nothing other than moving some pucks, making some passes. He has no goals. He's like a minus 24. He can't keep anybody out of the crease. You don't think you're going to get more effort out of Zamula? I'm going to tell you will.
yeah. And look, I'm good with bringing guys in to get some NHL mistakes out of the way.
Right.
Let them do it in a season that's lost in the standings.
Like, what's Keith
To
Yandel
get
doing
something
for
out
you
of it.
anymore? Like, he hasn't done
Yeah,
much
he's not going to be here
anyhow.
next year.
No. So it's like you got to move some of these guys in. You can't get hung up and worried about this record. And even Chuck sort of fell into it in the press conference, was kind of like, well, Keith Yandel's going to be playing games here. We want guys to develop. And it's like, okay. I mean, I get the development part, but at least get the look before you decide Zamula needs the development. They didn't get enough of a look yet.
Yeah, I mean, maybe as we get beyond the All-Star break, we start to see those things. And
Maybe.
I think part of it is that you got to see what happens with Ellis. a lot of fans just go, well, just shut Ellis down, make sure he's ready for next year. But I think they want to get a look at him along with Ivan Provorov.
I'm sure they would. I just feel like he's going to be shut down though.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be a surgery at some
And
point,
it's I
and
do
get that
too.
done sooner than later, so he goes into the off season
Yes.
ahead of schedule, not chasing getting ready for next season, because that can just set you back again next season. So you might as well do it sooner
And I
and make
think
that decision soon.
yeah, and I think it's a coin flip on Couturier getting season ending too, because he was skating the other day, but really slow. Like when the press conference was going on, he was out there and he was
Throwing
just,
around.
yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's his last skate before he gets worked on. Like if he doesn't come around, maybe that's why he was doing it. I don't know. But all I know is if they do put these guys out and they do put them on long-term injury, it does help what they could do at the deadline to help improve the future. Because right now,
Uh-huh.
there is no future for this year. This year's, essentially over as far as winning anything. So now you have to start looking at the other things. And yeah, LTIR could be your best friend so you could eat some money so you can get some better players.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I saw somebody. I'm gonna see if I can find this tweet, but it might have been Mikey from uh, OMB that
Okay.
said, people just like bailing on Ivan Provorov, and
Yeah,
it's
I
been a
saw it. It was
shit
him.
couple of years, yeah. And everybody wants to kind of when things are this sideways, everybody wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yes.
I guess that's the term. And you look at Provorov, and yeah, is he too partner dependent at this point? Absolutely. But he's also a guy that can play 28 minutes a night. He is a guy that if they can get a partner that can be in there and be healthy with him, then he is a guy that is a major asset that's not easy to find. Not to mention, Russ, he's on a contract that's not, in too detrimental at all.
No, they have cost certainty with him.
Yeah.
He is still their best conditioned athlete among all other, compared to anybody else. Yeah, he's made a few more errors than he's normally made. He did have a little bit of a confidence crisis, I think, a few weeks ago. I think he's kind of over that. I think it is hard. I mean, again, he's not a 25-year-old. He's not. And he has had different partners. And while he is partner dependent, it is kind of rough that he hasn't been able to have one stay for a number of years. It really helped Brandon Carlo to have Chara for those years.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
Brandon Carlo was not ready for the NHL, but they knew, hey, with Chara there, we could do this and get away with it. And they did. It kind of like in the middle there, Provorov was kind of like, he didn't have that help. And I think he will overcome this. But again, he does his job. He is not supposed to be like more than a 40-point defenseman.
Yeah.
He's supposed to do everything else, though.
Yeah, everybody's caught
Potentially.
up at Hedman and Norris and
Yeah,
being
no,
that
no,
guy.
no, no, no.
That's
I
not him.
mean, that's not him.
Uh,
Still doesn't
it,
mean he's not a number one defenseman, though.
yeah. Look, when team success is so fleeting like it's been this year, everybody's value goes down in a fan base's eyes. Same thing's happening with Konechny. Konechny's a
Well,
guy.
he's brought some of that on
Oh,
himself.
absolutely. His the thing about him, Russ, to me is, and I was talking to somebody about this, that's pretty plugged in, and the gap from his best game and the gap from his worst game is way too big. Like you
Yes.
want his bet, you'd be fine with his best game staying where it is, but that floor has got to come up. That when he's not playing well, it's not subterranean.
Yeah.
He's
So
got to
I
bring that floor up in his worst.
I did something last game that I don't do a lot, but I was kind of like, really looking at just what Konechny did at every moment of the ice, right? And if you remember, maybe it was the second period, he had that puck. He looked like he was going down a net. All of a sudden, puck's jumping off his stick. He doesn't have a play.
Yeah,
He gets frustrated. You could tell he went to the bench frustrated. There was another play where he takes a shot, maybe it missed the net or something. He gets frustrated. It's like he's definitely more frustrated now than he's ever been. But I also watched him in the defensive zone because, like, that's where my seat is. It's easy to see him. And he basically, all he was doing was jumping from high to low, never touching the puck, never getting his stick on anything. And then all of a sudden, when he was high, the puck went low and there's shots against Carter Hart there because, the forward's not really playing any defense there. He's just kind of there,
drifting.
misguessing all the time, not checking anybody, not trying to eliminate somebody out of a play, not even trying to have an active stick, really, just kind of there. And
Yeah.
that's a problem in his game right now.
Yeah, at both ends of the ice, you
At
as
both
a
ends, yeah.
player, you have to even when you don't have the puck or you're not battling for a puck, you have to make yourself a factor in the play. So offensively, you have to make yourself a movable option,
Yeah.
that they have to, be very aware of. If
I
you're
learned
standing
that in
still, it's easy.
basketball. I learned
Yeah.
that in basketball. A coach taught me that once. He's like, "Look, it's great to have the ball, like, 'cause I was like a point guard." He goes, "But when you don't have it, you've gotta keep cycling through, you gotta keep moving, you gotta keep
Yeah.
being an option, even if you're just gonna pass it again." And that's the same with him, right? You gotta keep moving through, you gotta have your stick down all
Mhm.
the time. Because if someone finds your stick, maybe you'll score, maybe you'll be able to pass it, but you're right, he's not moving well without the puck at all.
Yeah, that's a confidence thing. You mean you start to watch the game too
Yes.
much when you don't have that confidence. Absolutely. Let me
And
ask you about
JVR,
heart.
I looked at his output for the month, right? And if you took out that two-goal game, it ain't much, man.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say, what did he put out?
It's not a lot.
Puts out about as much as a nun.
Yeah. And it's just, and it's like I do try and watch him in games too, and I'll never see him throw the body just because, hey, it might be a good play. Maybe he gets near the net once or twice a game, maybe. He certainly looks for those chances where there's sort of those, I don't want to say cherry picking kind of easier goals, but he does seem to hone in on those and
Yeah,
get those chances. And then there's a lot of nothingness, right?
it's all safe space.
Safe space.
Friend
That's a good
zone.
way to do. Yes.
You're not willing to go in there. It's weird because he's not a physical player, but
No.
in the few times where he does bring a physical edge, his game is way better when he
Oh yeah.
does. It's not
Yeah.
because he's an intimidating hitter or anything like that. It's because it's engagement.
Right.
It's engagement in what's going on out there. You get a little burr up on your saddle, and you're a little bit more engaged, and then you're willing to not stay in the friend zone and in the safe space on the outside. You're going to those areas around the net because if he's not going to the areas around the net, he's not going to give you much.
Right. No, that's true. I mean, it's interesting. I remember when they brought in TVR into the camp one year, and that's Trevor Van Riemsdyk, his brother. And I was like, I don't know, does this guy really have anything? Or are they doing this to, just be nice? And honestly, he's a better player than his brother now. He's only 5 points difference from James.
As
And
a D man.
as a D man, and he was just an invite. Like he was a nobody in the NHL. And Van Riemsdyk was a guy that would score at least 20, 25 every year, and he got 10, and two of them. One of them is a two-goal game this month, and he's got 7 assists. He's going to have an
Yeah.
all-time low year for assists.
What do? You buy him out, or I mean, you can
You
try and
can't buy
move
him
him
out. No, you can't.
because you
I'm
don't
going to
want to
go back.
spread the pain out.
Yeah, well, but this is the problem. It's the same reason I said the Rangers shouldn't have bought Shattenkirk out. He's gonna go somewhere and do something, and Shattenkirk did. So
Yeah,
will Van Riemsdyk. And so I just gotta trade him for whatever I can get, even if I have to eat half of everything that's left on his salary. And that's
yeah.
part of the LTIR. But don't buy him out, and just let him go wherever he wants, and I get nothing. Don't do that.
Yeah, I agree with you because I can't attach any kind of asset or prospect or anything to
No,
get rid of him. I'm
no.
not doing that. I'm not playing that game with only 1 year beyond this one.
Right.
Um, Russ, let me ask you because when you look at the draft order, if the league or the season were to end now, Montreal's got the number one overall
Yep.
pick or best odds to land the number one overall pick at 25.7. Arizona at 12.1, and geez, the NHL cannot let the number one overall pick go there in the next couple of years.
Oh,
I mean, playing in
it'd be brutal.
a 4,000 seat collegiate arena. I mean, what a
Honestly,
disgrace!
I don't even know if that's real. I think this is their
Oh, it's
last
real.
gasp. No, I mean, it's real as far as that arena. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
real. Like Bettman hasn't said anything. Is he really going to let a team play there? He barely let them play at the Coliseum, citing that it wasn't NHL quality and they had to make certain upgrades. How's he going to get it? I mean, again, who's going to subsidize these games to make it worthwhile for anybody?
well, I mean, they have to. I think Freach said they have to put like $30 million at to write a check just to get the arena up to NHL spec. Because when a team comes in, they got to have workout facilities, got to have all
Right.
these different things, and
Yeah.
it's not about capacity in that regard. It's about having NHL players collectively bargained hey, when we go into a building, these are the things we have to have. It's like our rider, like a band.
Yeah, but they're going to be losing money every game.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, they said that, well, they'll jack up the price of the ticket, but
But
who's going
it
to pay
doesn't,
for it to go
and it
see a
won't even
sub?
be.
Yeah.
If they do all these upgrades, somebody said it might only be 3,200 seats, something like that.
Yeah, that's what Fried was saying as well.
I mean, like, you can't
That's
make money on
joke.
that.
No, not as an NHL team. It's not going to cover your payroll.
No. Well, it might if they have like 15 UFAs, but that's a whole other thing. If they all of a sudden,
Yeah, I think Fried said it best though. They're going to have to sell that team back to the league, and then the league's going to put it up
yes,
for auction. They're not going to just move it, and then it's going to be an auction between Houston, Quebec,
yeah.
and maybe some other
But
city.
you can't do Quebec only because you're 78 cents to the US dollar. Like, that just seems like a losing argument.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a ready-made arena there though.
They
Houston
do.
kind of does. They
Kind
have
of
to do
does.
work, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think the
The other
preference for the league
arena,
would be
by the
Houston.
way, I did research. The other arena still has ice, where they used to play back in the old JR days.
Oh my
That still
god.
has ice.
Yeah. What I mean, it's just been a mess there for far too long.
It's just a disaster.
So, but the point of that
But you were
is,
getting back to the draft, so
yeah, I mean, they can't end up with if they didn't get Austin Matthews, the local native son, they can't get Connor Bedard in 2023. That's my point.
I
But
get it.
Seattle right now, the third best odds to land the number 1 overall pick at 10.9%,
Mhm.
10.9% to land number 2 as well. Then Ottawa, Buffalo, New Jersey, and then the Flyers. Will the Flyers improve those odds to get the number 1 overall pick,
It's
or
gonna be
will they get
hard to.
worse?
It's gonna be hard to, because the other teams are really bad too, and, like, Buffalo barely even has a goalie now. So,
Yeah,
as
they
much
start out
as
with
you think
Craig
the
Anderson,
Flyers
and
yeah, as much as you think the Flyers can fall, there's not a lot more room to fall. But just as an example, because, somebody, I think it was Bill Matt, said, "Hey, um, number 11 pick, that's bad." And I'm like, "Listen, in this draft, number 11 pick's pretty good." And he's like, "It's failure." I'm like, "Yeah, failure is always going to be the path to better draft picks. Like, you don't most of the time, unless you made some sort of snookeroo trade, um, most of the time, a really good team's not going to pick in the top 10. So it is the way it is. But, like, as an example, there were guys that the Flyers could get. Frankie Nazar from the U.S. national team. He's just a big time playmaker. I wrote a nice article about him for EP Ringside. He's a center. He could be pretty dynamic. He's not going to be a first liner, I think, but I think he's a second liner. And I think there's a lot there. There's defensemen all over the place, but God forbid I mention a defenseman to Flyers fans. The head will drop. Will be like, "Oh, we want offense." So I'll give a
who was the
name.
guy you just said, by the way?
Frank Nazar.
Okay. What about
There's
like a guy like Connor Geeky? He'll be like around that area too,
He will
right?
be. He will be. The only thing you worry about Geeky is not the best foot speed, but he could exist like the Tyler Toffoli, though. He could exist that way and
Hmm.
score goals. He's got great hands. He's got everything else, and he gets from A to B. But it's just you worry a little bit about that. If Brad Lambert drops, that's the guy who could be really dynamic, but his dad's a little weird. He's Lane is his cousin. Uh, but he's really fast, could play center or wing. He's not having the year everybody thought he would, but when he was
Hmm.
starting the World Juniors until it got shut off, he looked really plugged into that. So
Yeah.
maybe he's just not ready to play above his age grade, but at his age grade, he was good. And, this is the guy who people thought could have been the first overall pick years ago. And then, Shane Wright took over. So he's another one. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is a guy who I like at Djurgården, another center, another guy who could score goals, but he also can play make. I
Swede?
like a Swede. I like him. Well, he may not be a Swede. He may be a Finn playing over there because the
Okay.
name actually sounds more Finnish. I sometimes get those confused. Joachim Kamel is a guy everybody has really high. I haven't seen enough yet to put him that high. Some people have him as high as 2, so they probably won't get a chance at him. There's Yurov from Magnitogorsk. If they want to go Russian, a right
What
winger.
about Cutter Gauthier?
Yeah, Cutter Gauthier is a good one. He'll be there after that pick too, though, I think. And he's
Mhm.
been improving. He could play center or wing. I do see some value at center now because he's starting to win faceoffs. He's probably got the best shot in the draft, and he has been making more plays. Like in games that I'm at, he's making some highlight plays now where you say, okay, I see him with his a little bit of playmaking now too, now that he's at center instead of on the wing. So if Gauthier is where they're going to pick and that's their guy, I'm good with it. But if you're going to trade down, kind of like what they did with Caulfield to try and get two players, I'm not in favor of it. So I want to get the best player where I am. If I'm the Flyers, I don't want them to move anywhere. And I want to take a guy at the right spot. So if Nazar is there and Gauthier is there, I got to go with Nazar because of the higher end ability, higher end skating. Everything's great on Gauthier, but there's just a little bit more with Nazar. And so I have to go with that. I can't, because again, that has been one thing that's been with the Flyers is they've gotten guys that definitely will get to the NHL, but some of them don't explode at the NHL. And so you have to sometimes go for a little bit more.
When you look at, let's look at that real quick. Caulfield and Cam York. We know that that draft, and the Flyers passed on Caulfield not once but twice. He ends up going 15th, I believe, overall in the 19 draft. And you look at him, and he came in with Montreal and had some really dramatic moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all said and done so far, in 39 NHL games, 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. Now, I know the team stinks this year, and that's part of it. But when you look, I mean, look, the question on Caulfield was real simple. Size. Is he going to be able to get to places to be able to use that scoring ability? We've seen him have some dramatic plays. A couple of times he's really flying the zone to do it last season. But when you look at Caulfield now, how do you kind of evaluate that draft pick?
I still say he was the guy to get because he is just improving his two-way game now. I think there was a slight loss of confidence, which can happen in a young player. Remember, when you get put in the playoffs, you're not being asked to play in your own zone. You're kind of coming in, you're running in there, you're playing all offense. He did great at that. He's got playoff points. So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And he did perform well in those playoffs. And then, things did start to go a little sideways simply because he wasn't pulling his own on his own end. And so I think once he starts to do that, he put on muscle. He's definitely faster than he was. I'm not worried about Caulfield at all.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button there.
That's okay, but I got to run. I appreciate the close-up, though.
Yeah. You got to run?
Yes.
All right. Do your thing. Thanks, Russ.
At Sportsology. Thanks, everybody.
Is the website. There's Russ Cohen joining us on Stick to Hockey Live. Great stuff. Yeah, I look at Caulfield. I'm still just not sure. Yeah, the ability to score is there, and he's very good at finishing. But that size is going to be a problem. And again, when you look at his numbers, he did have some playoff success, but all said and done, 29 games this season, he's got 1 goal, 7 assists, and 8 points, minus 15. And then the year prior in 2021, in 10 regular season games, 4 goals, 5 points. And in 20 playoff games, 4 goals, 8 points, and 12, or 4 goals, 8 assists, and 12 points. So performed well in those playoffs. Montreal was on that heater, but I'm still not sure. I'm not sold. But I was a guy that was advocating that pick when they were there at that draft. So we shall see. All right. Flyers will be back in action tomorrow night facing Winnipeg. Try and win 2 straight. When's the last time they won 2 straight games? I mean, they just got their first win of 2022, obviously this weekend over the Kings on the last day of the month. They've never gone 0 for a month other than February, or excuse me, not February, April. But usually April in a normal NHL season is much shorter and a lot less games. Season usually ended anywhere between April 6th and April 9th. But the Flyers have never gone 0 for any of the other months. So October, November, December, January, February, March. And they almost did it in this first month of 2022. Didn't happen. They got the win over the Kings in overtime. They'll look to win 2 straight games, and they'll look to do it for the first time. I'm looking at the schedule now. They have not won 2 straight games since there was actually a break in between, since December 18th against Ottawa, where they won in overtime, and then out in Seattle on December 29th. Now, there was 2 postponed games in there, December 21st and 23rd, when the league kind of shut down a little early around Christmas, but they were have not won back-to-back games in 5, 6, almost 6 weeks. So they'll have that opportunity tomorrow night against the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg, they're a weird team. I look at Winnipeg and I go, what's the deal with Winnipeg? Last year, when they were playing in the All Canadian division, you looked at Winnipeg and go, that's a team that could win that division. This year, though, they're out of the mix right now. 43 points. They got a record of 18, 16, and 7. 43 points, sitting in the 6th spot in the Central Division, and good teams ahead of them. I mean, you look, Dallas is the one team right ahead of them, but St. Louis is tied for the 3rd spot with the Minnesota Wild, although Minnesota's played 4 less games than the St. Louis Blues. Minnesota legit 27, 10, and 3. And then Nashville and the Colorado Avalanche as well, leading that division, 67 points. Matter of fact, the Colorado Avalanche tied for the top spot in the entire NHL with the Florida Panthers at 67 points. Panthers have played 45, but Colorado, 67 points, only played 43 games. They are just been unbelievable. 22-1 at home this season. So, all right, that's going to put a wrap on this episode of Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. Thanks to Russ Cohen for joining us at Sportsology on Twitter, sportsology.com. All his stuff is there, EP Ringside as well. Make sure you check in on all Russ's material. Great draft stuff and great hockey stuff to boot. And we appreciated him taking the time today. We'll have another episode coming up on Thursday. But in the meantime, you need to download the app, Parx Sportsbook app. Just go on your app store, type in PARX Sportsbook, find it, download it, and then open up an account. And you do not need any silly promo code. You don't need to put in Jason or Philly or Fly, any code in there. You just open up an account, deposit, and your first bet is risk-free up to $500. And you can bet on player performances. You can bet on spreads. You can bet puck lines. You can bet money line, player performances, first to score, last to score, just to score, exact score. You can do the same game parlays, you name it. Your first bet is risk-free up to $500. So again, just download the app, Parx Sportsbook. Do it on your iPhone or your Android, and you just have to open up an account, deposit, and that first bet, risk-free up to $500. It's a great deal. And again, no hoops to jump through with the silly promo code and all that. So download the app and get in on the action. Do it, before, the big game happens in football. Do it before the All-Star break in hockey. You still got college hoops. You got pro hoops. You can get in on all of it. Not to mention baseball around the corner. So tons to get in on. F1, which I'll be wagering on. And make sure you follow Parx on all the different social media channels as well. At Parx Sportsbook on Twitter. Or you can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. There you'll get great content, daily specials, Natalie and Sam and all the different contributors putting out great content. Harry and I will have an episode of Odd G's coming up tomorrow at 1:30 that we will stream out live on all those platforms, and you can find our content there as well. So make sure you give them a follow on at Parx Sportsbook, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. If you are listening via audio, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, any of those things, make sure you subscribe, leave us a rating and review. We would greatly appreciate that. And if you or your business are looking to start a podcast, you got to go to Wildfire Podcasting. They are our partners, and they're great. They got a great studio in Philadelphia, just outside minutes from Philadelphia, in Clementon, New Jersey. And if you're thinking of a career in sports broadcasting, or you're a company, you want to get your message out there, you want to become the expert in your field, podcasting is a great way to do it. So go to wildfirepodcast.com or email Jim. Jim is the man, Jim Grasso. And his email is jim@wfgnj.com. jim@wfgnj.com. Tell him I sent you, and your first episode will be free. First show will be totally free. Again, wildfirepodcast.com. Everybody, thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your Monday. We'll talk to you coming up Thursday. Another brand new Stick to Hockey Live